The rain came in slow, cold sheets that blurred the outline of the old St. Mercy orphanage. For years, the building had stood like a corpse of memory, abandoned, boarded up, its windows black with rot. The government had long ago condemned it, claiming the structure was too unstable, too tainted by tragedy. But tonight, the sound of engines broke the silence as a convoy of volunteers rolled up the muddy path. Their headlights sliced through the fog, illuminating the orphanage gates, rusted iron bars chained together, a faded wooden sign barely clinging to a single nail, St. Mercy Orphanage, founded 1902. Among them was Evelyn Ross, a history graduate and volunteer for the city's restoration project. She wasn't here out of charity, not really. She had grown up in the system herself, bouncing from foster homes that never kept her long. The idea of restoring a place once filled with lost children, it felt symbolic. Maybe healing. Maybe closure. But from the moment she stepped out of the van, she felt it, a cold presence that didn't belong to the weather. It wasn't just decay or neglect. It was watching. Creepy, huh? Said Liam, a fellow volunteer, pulling his jacket tighter. Feels like this place is breathing. Evelyn glanced at the orphanage doors, massive oak slabs scarred with deep scratches. Yeah, she whispered. Breathing, or remembering. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and something else, something metallic, like old blood. Their flashlights flickered over the peeling wallpaper, children's drawings half erased by mold, a cracked crucifix still clinging above the entryway. This must have been the main hall, Liam said, sweeping his beam across a grand staircase. Dust danced in the light, curling like mist. We'll start inventory here and then. A thud interrupted him. It came from above, a single, heavy clunk, as if something fell, or moved. Probably raccoons, said Jody, the team leader, forcing a laugh that died too quickly. Everyone stick together. Let's get the first floor catalogued before dark. But Evelyn's attention was fixed on something else. A door at the end of the hall stood slightly ajar, though she could have sworn it was closed a second ago. The brass plaque on it read, Records Room. She felt drawn to it, pulled. Her steps echoed softly as she approached. The smell changed as soon as she pushed the door open, less rot, more, preservation. Shelves of boxes, papers, and dusty photographs lined the walls. On a central table lay a stack of old reports and faded portraits of children. But at the far end of the room, one thing stood out, a small wooden crate, sealed shut, its lid marked with red wax. Strange symbols were carved along its edges, circular, overlapping runes that seemed to shift when she looked too long. Her fingers trembled as she brushed away the cobwebs. Beneath the dust, a date was burned into the wood. January 6, 1956, do not open. Evelyn. She jumped as Liam appeared. Behind her. Jesus, don't sneak up like that. He nodded toward the crate. What's that? I don't know. It looks important. Or cursed, he said, trying to smile but failing. Let's call Jody before we touch anything. But before Evelyn could respond, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then total darkness. A whisper slid through the black, a voice that didn't belong to any of them. Soft. Childlike. Let me out. Evelyn froze. Her breath hitched. Did you hear that? Liam's voice was thin. Hear what? Then came another whisper, closer this time, right beside her ear. I've been waiting. She dropped the flashlight. The beam rolled across the floor, landing on the crate. The wax seal was melting, impossibly, as if touched by invisible fire. The lid trembled. Evelyn, Liam gasped, what's happening? The lid snapped open. Inside lay a porcelain doll, perfectly preserved despite the decades. Its white dress was soaked in a faint brown stain, dried blood. Its glass eyes gleamed in the dim light, too alive, too aware. Holy hell, Liam whispered. Is that? Evelyn nodded slowly, her voice cracking. Annabelle. The air turned thick, heavy with a suffocating pressure. Every breath burned. The doll's head twitched, ever so slightly, the corner of its cracked mouth stretching into something like a smile. The door behind them slammed shut. Papers flew from the shelves, spiraling in a silent storm. The whisper returned, louder now, layered with other voices, hundreds of them, crying, laughing, screaming. Liam tried the door, it wouldn't budge. It's locked. Evelyn turned, eyes wide, her voice a broken whisper. No, it's not the door that's keeping us in. From the crate, Annabelle sat motionless, her eyes glimmering faintly red under the rolling flashlight. And then, the doll blinked. The lights burst back on. The whispers stopped. Everything was still. Jody's voice echoed from the hall, panicked. Guys? What's going on? Evelyn and Liam stared at the crate. Annabelle sat exactly where she had been. But the melted wax had hardened again, sealing her shut. Evelyn swallowed hard, trembling. Let's not say anything yet, she whispered. Outside, thunder cracked. Rain lashed the windows like claws. And deep within the sealed crate, behind glass eyes and stitched lips, something ancient smiled. The doll was awake. And she wasn't alone. The storm hadn't stopped since the discovery. Rain drummed relentlessly against the roof of St. Mercy Orphanage, and every crash of thunder seemed to echo inside the hollow halls like a heartbeat, steady, deliberate, alive. Evelyn hadn't slept. None of them had. The image of the doll, that porcelain face, that faint red glow behind its eyes, was seared into her mind. Even now, as she sat in the hallway with a flashlight and a thermos of cold coffee, she couldn't shake the feeling that something inside the orphanage had shifted after they opened that crate. Jody's voice broke the silence. We're not supposed to be here after hours. The generator's unstable, the structure's compromised, and you think ghosts care about safety regulations? Liam muttered, pacing near the staircase. His usual sarcasm was gone, this was fear trying to disguise itself. Evelyn looked up at the grand staircase, dust falling from the railing, old portraits of nuns and children staring down from the walls. You heard that voice too, didn't you? She asked softly. Liam hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. It said it's been waiting. The hallway lights flickered, humming weakly before steadying again. A pipe groaned somewhere in the ceiling. The whole building seemed to breathe, expanding, contracting, sighing. Jody rubbed her temples. Okay, everyone calm down. We'll lock the crate back up and report it in the morning. The restoration crew will take it to the museum for analysis. Evelyn's eyes darted to the records room door. No one should move that thing. Not again. But Jody was already walking. It's a doll, Evelyn. It's not alive. She pushed open the records room door. The crate sat in the center of the table, undisturbed. The melted wax had somehow hardened again overnight, sealing Annabelle completely. But there was something new, a dark stain spreading slowly across the lid, seeping from the seams like thick, syrupy blood. Jesus, Liam breathed. Tell me that wasn't there before. Jody leaned closer, frowning. Probably old varnish bleeding through the wood. Humidity can. A droplet fell from the ceiling and landed on her hand. It was warm. Red. She looked up. Above them, the plaster had darkened into a spreading patch, and then, with a slow, deliberate motion, blood began to pour from it. Thick, heavy streams ran down the walls, streaking across the crucifix and pooling on the floor. Evelyn stumbled backward, choking on the metallic stench. Oh my God! The room filled with the sound of faint giggling. Children. Dozens of them. But the laughter was warped, as if underwater, distorted, suffocating. Liam's flashlight flickered across the walls, and for an instant, shadows of small figures danced across the blood-stained plaster, little hands pressed against the surface from the inside. The crucifix above the door shuddered, then snapped off the wall, landing face down with a dull thud. "Out!" Jody screamed. "Everyone! Out, now!" They ran into the hallway, gasping for air. But the blood was spreading there too, seeping through the cracks in the walls, running down the stairs in slow, crimson rivers. The smell of decay filled their throats, sweet and rotting. Evelyn turned toward the portrait of a nun near the stairwell. The face in the painting was gone. In its place, smeared across the canvas in blood, was a child's message. "She's mine now." Her breath hitched. "What does that mean?" The whisper came again, faint but clear, echoing from the records room. "Annabelle wants to play." Evelyn froze. The air grew heavier. She could hear footsteps, light, almost playful, coming down the staircase. Tap. 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 They turned as one. At the top of the stairs stood the crate. It had moved. Somehow, it now sat upright on the landing, the lid wide open. Inside, there was no doll. "Where is she?" Liam's voice was barely audible. A sound like porcelain scraping against wood echoed down the corridor. The flashlight beam quivered as he turned toward it. From the end of the hall, a small shape emerged from the shadows. The doll's white dress dragged across the filthy floorboards. Her head tilted slightly, a crack running from her temple down to her chin. The glass eyes shimmered faintly red in the darkness. Jody whispered, "No, this isn't real." Annabelle stopped. Her head turned slowly, a mechanical, deliberate motion that ended with her staring directly at Evelyn. Every flashlight went out. The hallway fell into blackness. And in the dark, Evelyn heard it again, that giggle. Closer. Louder. Then the sound of something crawling. A hand, tiny, cold, hard as stone, brushed her ankle. She screamed. When the lights flickered back on, the doll was gone. But the walls were covered in bloody handprints, small ones, like those of children. And on the staircase, written in dripping red letters, were the words. "She called us back." The rain outside had stopped. The silence that followed was worse than any storm. Evelyn collapsed to her knees, trembling. "What have we done?" Liam looked at her, eyes hollow. "We didn't free her, Evelyn. She freed them." The orphanage moaned, its foundations creaking as if something deep beneath it was stirring. Somewhere in the shadows, porcelain cracked. And a voice whispered one last time before fading into the walls. "Welcome home." The following morning brought no sunlight. The clouds hung low, swallowing the horizon, leaving the orphanage trapped beneath a colorless sky. The volunteers huddled in the dining hall, pale, sleepless, each one pretending not to notice how cold the room felt. The power was still flickering, the air thick with dampness and fear. Evelyn sat apart from the rest, staring at the broken crucifix on the table. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. All night, she had heard footsteps pacing outside her temporary room, light, irregular, like someone dragging their feet in slow circles. When she'd finally opened the door, there was nothing there, except the faint sound of giggling echoing from the dark hallway. Jody was on the phone, pacing. "Yes, we're fine." "No, I don't know what caused it." "The walls were bleeding." "Bleeding. Just send someone out here, please." She hung up and rubbed her eyes. "They think it's a prank. They're not coming until tomorrow." Liam slammed his cup down. "Tomorrow? After what we saw last night?" Evelyn spoke softly. "You mean what we released?" Jody shot her a glare. "We don't even know what that thing was." But Evelyn did. Every story she'd heard about Annabelle, every whispered rumor, every nightmare about the Warren cases, was clawing back to the surface. That doll wasn't just haunted. It was a prison. And they had broken the lock. She rose slowly, her eyes drifting to the far corner of the hall where the old security camera hung, dead and crooked. "We should check the basement," she said. "If this place was sealed, there must have been a reason." Liam stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "You want to go deeper into the building that bleeds?" "Whatever happened here started there," Evelyn insisted. "We need to know why they hid the doll. Maybe we can stop it before." A loud crash cut her off. A window shattered in the hall, followed by the sound of something rolling across the floor, slow, deliberate, circular. They crept toward the sound. The flashlight beam quivered in Jodi's hand as it passed over shattered glass and dripping rainwater. Then it caught something, a small, round object resting by the door. A doll's eye. Porcelain, cracked, still glistening with what looked like tears of blood. Evelyn's voice shook. "She's not gone." Liam looked around, his breath quickening. "Then where the hell is she?" The orphanage creaked. The portraits on the walls, those faded images of children and caretakers, seemed to warp in the dim light. Their painted eyes shimmered, glassy and wet. Evelyn blinked hard, thinking it was her imagination, until one of the portraits, a little boy in a sailor outfit, moved his eyes. They followed her. "Oh God," she whispered. Then another child's eyes shifted. And another. Until every painting in the hall seemed alive, each set of eyes tracking their every move. The air temperature dropped. Their breath became visible, mist curling in front of their lips. From the shadows, a faint, rhythmic tapping began, like fingernails against wood. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Tap, tap, tap tap tap. Liam aimed his light down the hall. "Who's there?" No answer. Only that tapping, now faster, echoing from the ceiling, the walls, the floorboards beneath their feet. Then the lights went out. In total darkness, Evelyn's instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet wouldn't move. A low humming sound filled her ears, growing louder until it felt like it was inside her skull. And through the noise came a whisper. "You opened the door. Now you must see." Something brushed her face, soft, cold, and smooth like porcelain. She screamed and stumbled back as Liam's flashlight flared on again. On the far wall, dozens of dolls now sat along the shelves, ones that hadn't been there moments ago. Different shapes, sizes, ages. All of them staring, their painted faces cracked, their glass eyes glimmering faintly red. And in the center of them stood Annabelle. She was no longer pristine. Her dress was drenched in blood. Her eyes, once faintly alive, now burned with a deep crimson light. Evelyn's voice broke. "She's changed." The dolls began to move, tiny heads jerking, hands twitching, jaws creaking open as if breathing for the first time in decades. The sound was unbearable, a chorus of cracking porcelain and faint giggles blending into a shriek that filled every corner of the orphanage. Liam tried to swing his flashlight, but it exploded in his hand, the bulb bursting with a hiss. "Run," he shouted. They bolted down the corridor, slipping on the blood-slick floor. Dolls toppled from the shelves, shattering on impact, but their heads kept staring, their eyes rolling toward the fleeing humans. At the far end of the hallway, Evelyn turned to look back. Annabelle hadn't moved. But every shattered doll's face had changed, all their glass eyes now staring upward, as if worshipping her. When they burst into the main hall, gasping for air, the lights above them flickered violently. The crucifix, still lying broken on the floor, began to twist on its own, the metal groaning as it bent upright again, only this time, the figure of Christ was gone. In its place was the doll's porcelain face, nailed where his should have been. Jodi fell to her knees, sobbing. "We have to leave this place." Evelyn's heart pounded so hard it hurt. "No, if we run, she'll follow. She's attached to us now. To me." The front doors slammed shut with a deafening crack. Every light went out again, plunging them into darkness. And from somewhere deep inside the orphanage came the faint sound of children singing, their voices hollow, mournful, in perfect unison. Musical note, ring around the rosy, pocket full of blood, musical note. Evelyn's breath froze in her chest. She whispered, trembling, she's not haunting this place anymore. Liam turned toward her, eyes wide. Then who is she haunting? The answer came in a single whisper that slipped through the black. You. By the time night fell again, the orphanage no longer felt like a building. It felt like a living thing, a body of wood and plaster, breathing in the dark, its bones groaning beneath every footstep. The air carried whispers that never stopped, and somewhere within the walls, something small and heavy kept moving. Evelyn sat in what used to be the chapel, a collapsed ruin of pews and broken glass. A single candle flickered in front of her, trembling like her hands. Her face was pale, streaked with dust and dried tears. She hadn't spoken for hours, only whispered fragments of prayers she barely remembered from childhood, anything to keep her mind from breaking. But the silence between the prayers was worse. Because that's when she heard them. The children. Their laughter came and went like a breeze, soft at first, then sharp, like fingernails dragging across wood. Sometimes she heard crying. Sometimes the sound of a lullaby, hummed out of tune, drifting through the vents. But no matter where she went, it always ended with the same two words. Help her. Liam entered the chapel slowly, flashlight shaking. His face looked years older. Evelyn, we found something, he whispered. You need to see this. He led her into the east wing, a corridor they hadn't entered yet. The walls were black with rot, the smell of decay so strong it made her eyes water. They reached a room at the very end, its door half torn off the hinges. Inside were rows of small beds, the orphanage dormitory. But every bed was occupied. Not by children. By dolls. Hundreds of them. Each one tucked neatly beneath the sheets, hands folded across their chests like corpses. Their faces were childlike, some smiling faintly, others cracked, one or two missing eyes. Every doll wore a small brass tag around its neck. Evelyn leaned closer to one. The name engraved on it read. Sarah, age 7. Another, David, age 6. Another, Emily, age 8. Jody stepped forward, her voice trembling. These are their names. The children who died here. Evelyn's throat tightened. They weren't buried. Liam finished for her. They were kept. As if on cue, the dolls' eyes began to shimmer faintly. One by one, their heads turned toward the group. The faint sound of giggling echoed through the dormitory, overlapping until it became a chorus. Then, from the far corner of the room, came the slow creak of a rocking chair. It moved on its own, back and forth, and sitting upon it was Annabelle. Her dress was torn now, the white fabric streaked with dried crimson. Her cracked lips curled upward as her glassy eyes fixed on Evelyn. Evelyn stumbled backward, whispering, "Why us? What do you want?" The doll tilted her head. And behind her, the wall pulsed. Literally, as if something beneath the plaster was beating like a heart. The paint cracked, flaking away to reveal dozens of faint handprints pressed from inside. A voice came through, not a whisper this time but a cry, high and desperate, like a child begging from the other side of a grave. "Free us." Evelyn's pulse thundered. "The children," she breathed. "They're trapped. Inside her. Inside them." The candles in the room extinguished all at once. The only light left came from the faint red glow in Annabelle's eyes. And then, every doll in the bed sat upright at once. The sound that followed was unbearable, hundreds of porcelain necks cracking in unison, hundreds of mouths opening as one. From within each came a sound that wasn't human, a scream of pure torment, echoing from beyond death itself. Jody clamped her hands over her ears, crying out. "Make it stop. Evelyn fell to her knees, shaking. "They're not angry at us," she said. "They're begging to be released." But Liam backed away, eyes wide with horror. "Released? Evelyn, look at them. There's nothing left to release." The temperature dropped again. Frost crept across the windows, spelling words that formed one letter at a time. "Pray with us." The rocking chair stopped moving. Annabelle's hand slowly lifted and pointed toward the crucifix still hanging crooked above the door. Evelyn forced herself to stand, heart pounding. She grabbed the old Bible from the nightstand and opened it, her voice shaking as she began to read aloud. The words stumbled, caught in her throat, but she kept going, fragments of psalms, verses she barely understood. At first, nothing happened. Then the room began to shake. The walls split open, bleeding thick, dark fluid that poured across the floor. The dolls screamed louder, their porcelain bodies cracking and splitting, revealing skeletal fragments beneath. The faces of the lost children flickered in the shadows, their eyes hollow, mouths open in endless cries for help. Evelyn screamed the words louder, her voice raw and desperate, "Deliver us from evil." The lights burst back on, blinding white. Then, silence. When her vision cleared, the dolls were gone. The beds were empty. The floor was dry. Annabelle's chair stood still. Empty. Evelyn dropped the Bible, gasping for air. "Did it work?" she whispered. Liam didn't answer. He was staring at her reflection in the cracked window beside them. In the glass, Evelyn wasn't alone. A small girl stood behind her, pale, with dark eyes and blood running down her dress. Her lips moved soundlessly, but her voice filled the room. "She's not gone. She's in you now." Evelyn spun around, no one there. But deep inside her chest, she felt it, a heartbeat that wasn't hers. And somewhere in the walls, Annabelle's faint giggle returned. Not distant this time. Inside her head. Evelyn woke to the sound of whispering. Not around her, inside her. Her eyes flickered open to the dull gray light of morning seeping through cracked windows. She didn't remember falling asleep. The last thing she recalled was the screams, the blood, and the dolls, but now, the orphanage was quiet. Too quiet. Her reflection in the broken mirror nearby made her stomach drop. Her eyes were rimmed red, her skin pale, and faint bruises, shaped like tiny fingers, marked her neck. She touched them with shaking hands. They burned cold. Behind her, Liam stirred awake on the floor beside an extinguished lantern. Jody was gone. "Where's Jody?" Evelyn whispered. Liam rubbed his temples, groaning. "She said she needed air. Went to find the front doors about an hour ago." Evelyn's heart sank. She shouldn't be alone. "None of us should," he muttered. "But nothing's getting out of this place. Every time I try the main doors, it's like they move, like the hallway changes." Evelyn stared at him. "The orphanage doesn't want us to leave." As if to answer, a long creak echoed through the building, slow, deep, almost human. Then came the faint sound of humming. A lullaby. The same one they'd heard before. Musical note, "Hush little baby, don't say a word." Musical note. It was coming from the chapel. They followed the sound cautiously. The candle Evelyn had lit earlier was still burning on the altar, though the wax had melted down to nothing. And standing before it, head tilted, hair covering her face, was Jody. Evelyn froze. "Jody." Her voice was small. Fragile. Jody turned slowly, revealing wide, glassy eyes, not lifeless, but wrong. Her pupils were dilated, almost inhumanly large, and her smile was stiff, unnatural. "You woke her," Jody said softly. "She's been waiting for so long." Liam took a step forward. "Jody, we need to get you out of here." Her head snapped toward him with a sound like cracking wood. "No one leaves, Liam. Not until she's finished. Evelyn's stomach twisted. Who's finished? Jody smiled wider, her voice dropping to a whisper that didn't belong to her. The mother. The doll. The blood. The candle flame flickered violently, flaring high and then dying altogether. Darkness swallowed the room. Liam's flashlight stuttered back on, just in time to see Jody's body lift off the ground. Her arms hung limply, her feet dangling inches above the floor. Her head tilted back, mouth opening wider and wider until her jaw cracked, blood spilling down her neck. From that gaping mouth came a voice that wasn't hers, layered, echoing, ancient. She carries us now. The blood doll walks again. Evelyn screamed. Stop it. Let her go. But the voice only laughed, a sound that made her bones ache. You invited us in. You prayed with us. Now we live in you. The candles reignited on their own, filling the chapel with a dim red glow. Jody's body dropped suddenly, motionless. The moment Evelyn rushed forward, Jody's eyes flew open again. Empty, white, unseeing. And then she spoke in Evelyn's voice. Evelyn Ross, she whispered, how does it feel to know your soul isn't yours anymore? Evelyn stumbled back, shaking her head. You're not real. You're not real. But when she looked down, her hands were trembling uncontrollably, not from fear, but from something inside her. Her veins darkened, pulsing beneath the skin. She heard whispers curling up from her chest, her throat, her mind. Liam reached for her. Evelyn, what's happening to you? She couldn't answer. She dropped to her knees, clutching her head as voices screamed within her skull, children's cries, laughter, sobbing. Every sound blended into one endless, suffocating wail. Then, through it all, a calm voice emerged, soft, feminine, commanding. You freed me. Now I'll free you. Her reflection flashed in a broken shard of glass on the floor, and for a heartbeat, it wasn't her. The reflection showed Annabelle's face, smiling through Evelyn's eyes. She screamed and hurled the shard away, slicing her palm open in the process. Blood splattered across the stone floor, and as it did, the entire chapel shuddered. The walls began to bleed again. The crucifix twisted on its hook, spinning upside down. From the blood pooling on the ground, shapes began to rise, small forms, the faint outlines of children made from crimson mist. Liam grabbed her arm, desperate. Evelyn, we need to go. But she wasn't hearing him anymore. The voice inside her was louder now, drowning everything else. They were taken from me. They were my children. They need a vessel. You're perfect. She stumbled toward the altar, her movements jerky, unsteady. Her eyes rolled back, her lips moving on their own. Our Father, who art in heaven. The prayer twisted, her tone changing into something cold. Hallowed be, my name. The walls cracked open. Dolls began to fall from hidden crevices, landing around them in heaps. Each doll's face turned upward toward Evelyn, and smiled. Liam tried to pull her away, but a violent force threw him across the room. He hit the wall hard, his head striking the plaster. Evelyn lifted her gaze toward the ceiling, her voice deep and layered. Let the blood of the children awaken the mother. Then her eyes snapped open. They glowed faint red. The floor beneath her split apart. From the crack rose Annabelle's doll, half submerged in the earth, her porcelain body crawling upward like a spider. Her mouth opened, whispering in perfect sync with Evelyn's own voice. We are one. Evelyn collapsed, gasping, the candlelight flickering wildly. When Liam crawled toward her, she was breathing hard but alive, her eyes flickering between brown and crimson. Evelyn, he whispered, terrified. Please tell me you're still in there. Her lips trembled. For a second, her own voice returned. I can feel her, she's inside me. And she's not letting go. Then, faintly, from her mouth, not in her voice, came the whisper that froze his blood. "You should have never come here, Liam." The storm had returned. Wind howled through shattered windows, rain slamming against the boards like fists trying to break in. The orphanage trembled with every gust, but Evelyn barely noticed. She sat motionless in the chapel pew, soaked in sweat, her body trembling violently. Liam crouched beside her, pressing an old handkerchief against the gash on her palm. Her skin had turned pale, too pale, veins dark and pulsing with something thicker than blood. Every now and then, her body twitched, like invisible hands were tugging at her nerves. "Evelyn, look at me," he whispered. "You're still here. You can fight it." Her lips moved slowly, voice hoarse. "She's inside. I can feel her crawling. Every thought I have, she's whispering through it. Then block her out." She shook her head, tears streaking her face. "You don't understand. It's not just her. There are hundreds of them. Children. Their voices, they're screaming for someone to help." Liam glanced around. The chapel was colder than ever, breath steaming in the air. Candles that had once flickered faintly now burned blood-red, casting long, writhing shadows across the walls. The crucifix above the altar was cracked completely in half. "What does she want?" he asked. Evelyn turned toward him, eyes unfocused. "To be whole." The floorboards beneath their feet creaked, slow and deliberate. Then, a child's laugh echoed behind them. Liam swung the flashlight around, nothing. The beam trembled over broken pews, tattered curtains, and empty air. But when it swept over the altar, he froze. Annabelle was there. She stood upright, her porcelain face gleaming in the dim red light. The cracks in her skin had widened, blood seeping through them like veins. Her head tilted slightly, and from her tiny lips came a faint, wet giggle. Evelyn gasped, clutching her head. "No, no, no, she's pulling me." The air in the chapel shifted, heavy, charged, vibrating with an unseen energy. The walls began to bleed again, the red liquid streaming down in thick, pulsing lines. Words formed within it. "She shall be the mother of blood." Liam dragged Evelyn to her feet. "We're leaving. Now." But as they reached the doors, they slammed shut on their own. The lock turned with a sharp click. The candles went out. And in the darkness, came the sound of hundreds of small footsteps. Evelyn clung to Liam's arm. "They're here." Dozens of small silhouettes began to emerge from the shadows, faint outlines of children, translucent and twitching, their heads bowed. Their mouths moved soundlessly until one by one they began to speak, overlapping in a haunting whisper. "She gave us life, now she takes yours." Liam raised the flashlight, his breath catching. Each figure was pale, their eyes hollow sockets filled with blood. They stepped forward in unison, surrounding them. Evelyn screamed, "No. You don't have to do this." But the voices only grew louder, chanting now. "Mother of blood, awaken. Mother of blood, awaken." Annabelle's body began to move, slow, puppet-like motions, each jerk snapping bone that wasn't hers. Her porcelain hand lifted toward Evelyn, fingers twitching unnaturally. Evelyn doubled over, gasping as blood began to pour from her nose and eyes. Her veins pulsed black beneath her skin, her screams blending with dozens of others echoing in her skull. Liam tried to hold her. "Evelyn, fight her. You're stronger than this." Her head snapped up, eyes glowing red. A voice that wasn't hers came through, cold, ancient, cruel. "She belongs to me. The blood remembers." She flung her arm outward, and Liam was thrown across the room with an unseen force, slamming into the wall. The flashlight shattered, plunging them into darkness again. Evelyn rose slowly, her movements unnatural, puppet-like, the same jerks that Annabelle had made moments before. Her head tilted, the corners of her lips twitching into a cracked smile. But somewhere inside her, her true voice screamed. "Stop, please, don't make me hurt anyone." The doll's voice hissed through her lips. "You are the vessel. You are the cradle. Through you, they live again." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the chapel for a single horrific second. The walls were now covered in faces, hundreds of screaming children, their skin pressed beneath the plaster as though trapped within it. Their eyes opened in unison, glowing faintly red. Liam crawled toward her, his voice breaking. "Evelyn, remember who you are. She's using your guilt. That's what she feeds on." His words struck something deep within her. Memories flashed, being a lonely child in the system, the endless years of abandonment, the aching need to belong. That's what Annabelle had whispered to her in the dark. "You'll never be alone again." Evelyn screamed, clutching her head. "Get out of me." Her body convulsed violently, thrown backward by a force that shook the ground. The candles burst back to life, forming a circle of red fire around her. Annabelle's doll began to levitate from the altar, rising higher and higher until she hung suspended in midair, her glass eyes blazing with bloodlight. Then, in one horrifying motion, the doll's head turned completely around. The voice that came through made the entire chapel tremble. "The mother is born in blood." The ground split open. A torrent of crimson liquid gushed upward, soaking the floor. The walls buckled, screaming as though alive. Evelyn's body arched backward, her scream echoing through the entire orphanage. Her reflection shimmered in the blood, half her face, half the doll's. Liam pulled himself toward her, reaching through the torrent. "Evelyn. Please." For a moment, her eyes flickered back to brown. She whispered weakly, "Run, she's coming." Then her face twisted again. A cruel, cold smile spread across it. In Annabelle's voice, she whispered. "She's already here." The lights exploded, plunging everything into total darkness. And when the thunder crashed, Liam realized he was no longer alone. Something stood behind him, breathing. The orphanage was no longer just a building. It was alive, groaning, breathing, and bleeding. The walls pulsed like veins, oozing crimson with every flicker of lightning. The storm outside raged harder than ever, but inside, there was something worse: silence. A thick, suffocating stillness that carried a promise: the end was here. Liam stumbled through the flooded hallway, clutching his flashlight. The beam flickered weakly, cutting through the mist that now hung in the air like smoke. His ears rang with echoes of Evelyn's screams, but no matter how many turns he took, the corridors twisted back upon themselves. Every door led to another version of the same hallway, and every mirror reflected not him, but her. Annabelle. Sometimes, she was just the doll. Other times, she was a woman. Tall, pale, her eyes black voids leaking tears of blood. Her voice whispered in the walls, in the rain, in his own heartbeat. "You opened the cradle, Liam. Now you'll help deliver the child." He gritted his teeth and kept moving. He had to find Evelyn, or whatever she had become. The chapel was gone now, replaced by something else, a room that shouldn't exist. The ceiling was endless, the floor covered in water so dark it reflected nothing. In the center stood Evelyn, her back turned to him, hair soaked and matted with blood. Around her floated the orphan children, ghostly, silent, their faces expressionless. The doll lay at her feet, half submerged, staring up at her. "Evelyn," Liam whispered, stepping closer. "It's me." She didn't move. "Please, you can fight her. You're stronger than she is." Her head turned slowly, too slowly, and for the first time, Liam saw what she had become. Her eyes were black pits, her veins blackened beneath the skin, her mouth stained red. But worst of all was the faint smile twisting across her face, one that didn't belong to her. "She's not stronger," Evelyn said, her voice layered with another tone, Annabelle's. "She's eternal. She was born in sin, baptized in blood, and fed by the fear of every innocent who ever wept in this place. The water rippled violently. The children began to hum, a low, eerie melody that made the air vibrate. Liam raised his trembling hand, the crucifix still clutched between his fingers. Then let's end it. You hear me? Right now. Evelyn tilted her head. End it, she repeated softly. You can't end something that wants to be reborn. Suddenly, the floor beneath them cracked open, revealing a massive, pulsating heart beneath the surface, enormous and alive, beating in rhythm with the thunder outside. Each pulse sent waves of blood across the floor, reaching up like hands trying to grab him. Do you know whose heart this is? Annabelle's voice hissed through Evelyn's lips. It's the orphanage. Every soul trapped here, every scream, every tear, they feed it. And now, it feeds me. Liam shouted, then I'll destroy it, and swung the crucifix down into the water. A shockwave of energy burst outward, throwing him backward. The crucifix glowed red-hot, melting in his hand. The laughter that followed was deafening. Evelyn rose into the air, her arms outstretched. Blood rained upward instead of down. Her eyes burned brighter, her voice echoing through every wall. The mother of blood has risen. The orphanage convulsed violently, walls bursting open as rivers of blood flooded through. The spirits of the children screamed, their forms disintegrating into mist as they were absorbed into Evelyn's body. Her skin began to glow, cracking open like porcelain to reveal something beneath, something that wasn't human. Liam crawled toward her through the torrent, tears mixing with the blood. Evelyn, please. You're still in there. You can fight her. For a moment, her body froze. Her eyes flickered, black to brown, back to black again. Her voice, faint and trembling, whispered through the chaos. Liam, help me, she's killing me from the inside. He reached for her hand. I've got you. Just hold on. But Annabelle's laughter returned, louder, sharper. You think love saves you? Love made her weak. Love opens the door. Evelyn screamed. The heart beneath them burst, spraying blood and fire. The room shook so violently the ceiling began to collapse. Through it all, Liam held on, until Evelyn's eyes went wide with horror. She's inside you now, she whispered. Before he could react, a blast of energy threw them apart. He slammed into the wall, bones cracking. Evelyn's body went limp, sinking into the pool of blood as Annabelle's doll floated toward her, cracked ceiling, eyes burning once again. The doll's tiny porcelain mouth opened. From it came Evelyn's voice. Thank you for setting me free. Then silence. The storm ceased. The walls stopped bleeding. The orphanage grew still. Liam, barely breathing, pulled himself up. The doll sat motionless in the water, head tilted, innocent, lifeless. He stared at it for a long time before reaching down, wrapping it in a cloth, and locking it inside the case once more. He whispered, "You'll never hurt anyone again." But as he turned to leave, a small drop of blood seeped out from the case's corner. And somewhere deep inside the orphanage, a faint child's laughter echoed again, soft, playful, and full of promise. Evil never dies, it only changes hands. The camera would have panned out, the orphanage, silent under the storm. But in the final flash of lightning, the outline of a small figure stood in the window. A little girl, holding the doll by the hand. Both smiling.